All right. You're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell, and I have Tommy Castro with me. Hello there, Tommy.
Oh, hey man, how you doing? It's been we've done this before.
Many times before. The last
Only difference
couple,
was,
yeah, the last
yeah,
couple
go ahead.
records that you had on Alligator, we did this, and I haven't
Yeah,
talked to you, COVID and everything else. It's been a long
yeah.
time.
It's been a while, and I've been trying to keep busy, and as you know, new album out, and it feels good to have that under my belt and back out on the road touring again. It's like it's almost like it used to be, but not quite.
Well, you're a road warrior. I know that from all my conversations with you, being out in the road and all. You and the cruises. You're the man with that goes on just about all the cruises, from what I know, what I see.
Well, I'm just lucky that way, certain things happened that um, I got to go on the first one or two, and then I came up with an idea for a legendary rhythm and blues review um, that would go off the ship and take a few artists with me and travel around and do some shows on land promoting the blues cruise, and the blues cruise operation would promote our shows, and it was really a whole lot of fun. And that's where I met, became good friends with Deanna Bogart and Ronnie Baker Brooks and Magic Dick from the Jay Giles band. And anyway, since we started that review, that put me kind of in a situation where I had to be on board to host those reviews. And so I'm lucky enough to have been on over 30 blues cruises now.
Wow, 30. That's a lot.
Yeah, and that's not counting the handful of Delbert McClinton cruises I went on before that, maybe 7 or 8 of those. So I'm quite comfortable at sea. This will be a little different this year.
You got one
Um,
coming up, right?
Coming up, yeah, that's my next gig. My next gig, I think it's November 5th.
That's next
So
week, week after, or next, something like that.
yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I always enjoy them, and we know that we have a very safe environment set up. They've worked really hard to make sure that it's everybody on board will be, protected,
That's good.
vaccinated, tested, safe to go out. All the crew members have to go through rigorous quarantine and things like that. And so we should be able, my youngest daughter got married about a month ago, and it was right in the middle of a spike in Humboldt County where they had the wedding, and so it was necessary to ask everybody to either be vaccinated or recently tested, and it really made the whole event sort of like normal. We could all move around and hang
Yep.
out and do what you would normally do at a wedding without having to worry about masking up or getting sick or anything like that. And no, there were no problems. So it's going to be kind of like that, where if you go to take certain precautions, we should be able to hang out and interact and play and, go to the restaurants and all the venues and see shows and just like it used to be, so we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it'll come off without a hitch. And I'm ready to get back on the water though, man. We have a great time on those cruises.
All night long, I hear.
Sometimes it can go all night.
Yep.
I kind of leave that for the younger guys
Yes.
now. I get to bed. Yeah, come 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, that's enough for me. I'll be there. I'll call it a night. But some people will go until the sun comes up, and then it's pretty fun.
So let me tell you, I've been doing these interviews since COVID started because we weren't back at the radio station. And the way I do these interviews is the reason I do them is to let the listening audience understand a little bit more deeper about the artist they're listening to and the records they buy from the artist. So I like to go back to the beginning. You grew up in San Jose, California.
Yep.
How did you end up deciding that you wanted to play guitar and sing the blues, basically?
Well, it was a strange progression, I guess. It happened all just kind of spontaneously and naturally. But my what happened was, is, let's see, I remember being a little kid, and I liked music, whatever was on the radio. My older brother would play rock and roll music on the radio at the time, and he would go out and buy records and things. And then when I was old enough to, when I get a few bucks for my birthday or something like that, or mowing lawns or paper route or whatever, I had to get my hands on a few bucks. I also would go out and buy like 45s, and I liked rhythm and blues. I mean, I remember, I think the first record I bought was The Twist by Chubby Checker on a 45. So my older brother was the first guy to get a guitar in our neighborhood, and he was inspired to play because Beatles and the Stones and all of that.
Yep.
British Invasion, early British Invasion bands. It was kind of into.
So you were listening to that stuff.
I was listening, and he was in a band that were playing all of these songs. They'd play all these, whatever the hits were on the radio at the time. The band would play them live, and they would get gigs at dances and high school dances and things like that. So he was a teenager. I was a little kid, maybe 10 years old, and all I knew is that I was interested in those sounds and what was going on there. And whenever he was gone, I would take his guitar and play it, and then he would show me a few things once in a while. He'd say, "Listen, if you shine my shoes, I'll teach you a new song. Or if you wash my car, I'll show you some new chords and or some licks or whatever." So my older brother was, I got first inspired by that, and then I hung out with friends my own age, and that's when the blues started coming around, because I really liked the sounds of the Stones. I liked Michael Bloomfield and Paul Butterfield's band, and I liked. And I remember hearing Taj Mahal and Albert King on FM radio, and they would play the long version of Albert King's Blues Power on FM radio in those days. 18-minute long song. They would play it.
There you go.
Bacon Fat by Taj Mahal. I remember hearing Dr. John and Bobby Bland and. They were also playing psychedelic music and all kinds of rock music, and whenever it was blues, that was the stuff that grabbed me. One of my biggest influences probably came a little bit more into the 70s, I guess, was Elvin Bishop. Early 70s, I became a huge Elvin fan. I remember Party to the Cows Come Home was a hit on AM radio.
Yep.
And they played it every 15 minutes, and I'd wait for it. And I'd drive around in my Ford Falcon and sing it at the top of my lungs. So that's how it started.
Then a little later on, as you got a little older, you drove a delivery truck, I read, for a while. And that's where you learned how to sing a little bit.
That's where I learned how to sing, because I was in I would be in a band, a garage band or a band that's playing on weekends, and I would learn the songs that I was going to sing, listening to cassettes, and also just to keep myself entertained. I was driving around town in traffic and whatnot. I was perfectly happy listening to Little Richard, Wilson Pickett, Ray Charles, B.B. King, all of my favorite singers, Buddy Guy. And I could sing along with those songs, and I never had formal lessons. And most trained singers can tell that I had never had formal lessons. Although I did get some coaching from very good singers in my life. I was married one time to a girl that was really very well trained vocalist who studied with Judy Davis, a world-renowned voice coach, and so she shared some of her knowledge with me and gave me some tips and whatnot. But formal lessons, I didn't take them. I just listened to those cassette tapes in my van when driving around and sang along. And I just remember it was occasionally I'd get a funny look from some of the other drivers on the road because I was screaming at the top of my lungs, singing Long Tall Sally or something like that, or Tell the Truth by Ray Charles, where you really had to scream a little bit.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, but that was it. That's as much formal training as I had, and I would be in bands playing on weekends, and I had this I had started a little business of my own. I was self-employed, and I was able to make a nice living for myself and play out on the weekends with bands. And I just remembered, I think it was following my friend Chris Kane around town, who was also from my hometown. He'd be home playing once in a while at local gigs, but he would also go out on the road, and he would get on a plane and fly to Europe and perform. And he would put out an album and put out a record, and he was going off and doing these things. And I just thought to myself, man, if I put as much energy as I do into all this other stuff, if I just put all that energy and focused on my music and getting some more gigs, I bet I can make a living doing this, And so I moved out of San Jose and moved to San Francisco, where it was a little bit better scene, more gigs, and that's kind of where it all started,
Yeah,
or
I read
continued.
that you were busking in San Francisco for a little while, or tried to.
Well, I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money, and I knew if I was going to survive and pay the rent and eat, that I better have a plan. and and I noticed that there were professional musicians in San Francisco that played on street corners, and they made good money in a day. There's a lot of tourists would come through, and they'd have it worked out. And anyway, long story short, I tried it and I sucked at it. So lucky for me, I was getting gigs about that time, and I didn't have to do that for very long. Uh, I basically just tried it, and I did it a handful of times, realized it wasn't for me, and lucky for me, at that time I was getting some gigs. Um, it's as a sideman for different bands in town, and then a group called the Dynatones were looking to, they're replacing their guitar player, and they were going on the road. They were going to Chicago and start a Midwest tour, and they asked me if I wanted to join them, and the money wasn't very good, but I knew I had to do it, so I dropped everything and said, yeah, I'm in. And I piled into a van, and we drove 40 hours to the first gig.
What was that like the first time in Chicago? That's the home of all the great people that you talk about that you like listening to.
Yeah, I can't remember where we played with on that Chicago date, my first time there. But what I do remember is pork chop sandwiches on Maxwell Street. We went down, we went down Maxwell Street, and they had all these greasy Vienna sausage places, which also sold pork chop sandwiches. It's kind of traditional fare for Maxwell, because in the old days when they had the open market, it was like a flea market type thing. Uh, Guys they'd be playing blues out there, for tips, and maybe selling their cassettes, you know, and uh, and even before cassettes, they were doing that. There was an open market out there. I mean, long before my time. But the story goes, there were guys that would take like a barrel and cut it in half and make a barbecue out of it, and they would, you know, cook pork chops, and they'd take that pork chop with the bone and everything, slap a little mustard on a hamburger bun, and for a quarter or whatever, and they'd sell those all day and make some money. And so it was a traditional thing for, blues guys loved those pork chop sandwiches. You just had to learn how to eat around the bone and not break a tooth. And they would come with a bag of really greasy French fries, just dripping with grease. And man, at the end of the night, after playing a show, and back in those days, maybe having a few drinks, and And then after the gig, we'd all head down Maxwell Street and get bags full of those pork chop sandwiches. I'll never forget that.
That's good. That's a great story.
And when Blind Pig signed me, and we made it to Chicago eventually. Way later on, I started my band. I got a deal with Blind Pig. We were on the road, and we made it to Chicago. And hanging out with Edward and Jerry, we all went to we had to have we had the pork chop sandwiches together as sort of a solidifying our deal. We had to break grease together.
And Blind Pig, you were with them for quite a while, from what I remember.
Yeah.
I was getting those records coming in when you started. I remember
that first Blind Pig record put me on the map. There was no national. Nobody knew about me outside of the Bay Area, and I had put out a small album that we recorded live at the Saloon in North Beach, a 2-track thing that we did basically just to sell at gigs and to put it in an envelope and try to get other gigs. And it was not a big deal, but it turned out to be my first record. And then the very next thing I did was was signed to Blind Pig, and we did Exception to the Rule. And man, we were able to get an agent. Tom Gold Agency picked us up and booked us all over the country. And then we made a deal. Blind Pig made a deal with a French label so we went to Europe behind that. And we've just been doing it ever since. It's going on 30 years next year.
Yeah, I loved Live at the Fillmore, that record that came out. That was a great album.
That was like the fourth thing we did with Blind Pig. And so those guys were great. They were really good. They're good friends still. And they really did a lot for me. And
so let's talk about, there's something else that my listeners don't know, and I didn't really know about this, that you were the house band for 3 seasons on an NBC television series comedy showcase right after Saturday Night Live, right after Saturday Night Live. What was that like for you?
Oh, well, that was fun. I've had so much, it's hard to believe that I get paid for this, because we really have had a really great time. And that was in the early days. The same album you're talking about, Exception to the Rule, had come out.
Yep.
And we get a call. I don't know if it was through our booking agent, I think, from some producer at HBO. And he says, "Hey, we want you, we want you to do this comedy show." And he laid it out. It would be, you go down to Los Angeles for about 2 weeks, and you record 2 shows a night, and it's they're live with an audience, and there's no redos. It's just taped live, and they edit it later probably, but that was the deal. And our job was to play a little music while the comics come out and to do their bit. Louis Anderson was the host. He would announce them. And when he came out, we'd play a little music, and he would walk out, and then we'd stop, and he would announce the next comic, and we play a little music. They call it bump music. And here's the story, is that they said, "Listen, we don't have any money to pay royalties or residuals on these songs, sync rights or whatever it is that they call them when it's on video or on a television show. So you can't play any songs. You can't play anybody else's songs." I said, "That's fine. I have a whole bunch of my own songs." They said, "Well, we can't pay you for your songs either." And I said, so they said, "Don't you have some sort of generic sort of kind of music that you could play that isn't really anybody's songs?" And I said, "Well, how about this? How about if I sign off on my songs and you don't have to pay me, but you let me play my own songs?" And they said, "Okay, we'll do that." So we would play little snippets of our songs, Exception to the Rule, or or Nasty Habits, or Can't Keep a Good Man Down, or one of those things. And we would just play little bits of it. And that would happen every night after Saturday Night Live. that came on that show. And so it was really cool. And we're down in Hollywood. I remember one night we were driving with some of these people that we worked with. They were going to take us out to a nice dinner at a Hollywood restaurant. I'm a poor kid from San Jose, California, and I'm in the back. I'm in a limousine riding along with producers that are doing HBO productions and working for NBC and stuff like that. And they're taking me to dinner at the Ivy Room, me and the band. And while we're driving in the limousine, the House of Blues radio hour came on, and it was Dan Aykroyd featuring our record.
There you go.
And so that's what that was like. It was really like a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs, and it was a cool thing to do for a couple of 3 years maybe. And I think it helped us get recognition around the country. When we came to town, a lot of people did see that show and recognize us from there.
Must have been surreal to play your music and not get recognized for it doing that show.
Man, we were just happy to be there. It was a really fun thing to do. I mean, all we did all night was laugh. I mean, and I think we got asked to do it 3 seasons in a row. And I think the reason we were asked back is because we were good laughers.
That's good.
I'm a good audience for a comic. I get the jokes and I laugh. And I really was not trying to be a good laugher, but later on they told me, because they would like looking for a table of people with the camera that are laughing, right? That's part of their job. The cameraman is looking for people who are laughing, and the director, you can hear him in your ear. He's going, table three, there's a laugher. Hey, table six, they're laughing. And then every once in a while he'll be, go to the band.
Wow.
Because I was always laughing. Interesting.
So
thanks for the memories.
You're welcome. Blind Pig, you were with them for quite a while. You were with Deluxe for, I think, one record, and then 33rd Street label. And then in 2009, the most important label came calling. Alligator Records.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has been, that was the best business decision I ever made, was to sign with Alligator Records.
Tell me a little bit about that decision and how that came about with Bruce.
Well, I had like you said, I had done a few records with Blind Pig, and I actually signed to them twice. The second time, it was the time where the internet had come into the picture, and sales of CDs were down. And they didn't have the budget anymore to promote us at the radio level. And I was real disappointed with that we didn't get added to some of these adult rock stations like we used to. And so I was thinking, wow, I've got to do something else, love these guys and they're my friends, but I have to take a look around and see what my best next move is.
Survival.
And I kind of knew it was Alligator was the right fit for us. I kind of knew it, but to be honest with you, the only reason I didn't do it sooner is because Edward and Jerry were good friends of mine, and that was their biggest competition. They wanted to be out like Alligator. They wanted their business to be, they kind of modeled it after Alligator Records.
Yep.
Chicago office, they have a San Francisco office, but they really were, and for those days, they were one of the top blues labels, so nothing against them, but I needed to make a move. And so I didn't want, for years I thought about it, but I didn't go because I didn't want to do that to them, and then I just kind of later on realized, well, I have to survive. Yes. Like you said, and I have to move forward, and I have a band to feed, and I have a family to feed, and I've got to make sure that my records get played on the radio. And I think that I'll have a better chance with Alligator. And so I just called Bruce myself I called Alligator Records. I asked to talk to Bruce Siegelaar.
You called him direct. You just called him directly.
I called him directly because I've had management off and on throughout the years, but at that time I didn't have a manager, and I wasn't planning on getting one because I don't think they were earning their money. I don't think any of my managers ever earned what I paid them, and I was not going to do that again. I said, Randy and I, my bass player, and I handle all the business, and we do a pretty good job of it. There's a lot to be said for good management if you can get it, but at the time I was on my own, so I called them direct, and him and I hammered out a deal over the phone, and we did the Hard Believer album, which was one of my most successful records.
And he had a lot of input. I bet you he had a lot of input in that record when you started working on it.
We have a pretty good working relationship, and I went ahead and did a few things. I went ahead and I'm working with a really great producer, John Porter. And so we just started working on my material and recording it, and I didn't quite get how involved Bruce wanted to be. So we were just finishing things up and sending it to him, and he had he pushed back on a couple of things and asked for things to be changed, but it was negotiable. Everything was negotiable, and we settled on I can't even remember what the little differences might have been at the time. It wasn't any big deals. We worked them out and we finished the record. And like I said, it got me 4 Blues Music Awards that year, and I think it brought my career up a notch.
Another notch, yeah.
Better gigs, yeah. And I've been very happy there ever since. They really they know what I do, they know what I'm about. They know that we work hard. And if we put a record out, we're sure enough going to go on the road and promote it and sell it. And
so originally you called yourself the Tommy Castro Band way back, and then around 2012, I'm guessing, you changed the name of the band to the Painkillers. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I had a 6-piece band at the time, and it was known as the Tommy Castro Band, and it had grown from 4. And the original band was me, Randy, Keith, and Shad Harris on drums. Keith is our sax player. It was a 4-piece for a while. We made another record that had a lot of horn arrangements on it. So we started carrying our trumpet player around, Tom Poole, great player, played with Etta James and Bobby Womack, and he had an incredible career. Santa Esmeralda, he was part of the whole Latin rock thing here in the Bay Area. Just really a virtuoso trumpet player, and he joined the band full time. So now we were a 5-piece, and the next album came out had a lot of really important keyboard parts on it. That was the one that John Porter produced, which was called Painkiller, and coincidentally, it was the name of an album and a song. And that album had so many, John Porter, if you look at his work, he's big on keyboards. He loves the piano. He produced John Cleary and guys like that. And so the keyboard was such an important part of the sound. I thought, well, we'll take Tony Stead, who was the guy that played in the studio with us, on the road with us for a while, see how long this works out, So now I had a 6-piece band. Then we did the Hard Believer record, and that was a real success. And we had a 6-piece band run around the country, and I did that. And by then, I had it seems like I had a 6-piece group with horns for 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And I needed to do something different. And I remember watching Tab Benoit on a pool deck on a blues cruise with a bass player and a drummer, just kicking ass. And I thought to myself, there's nothing missing on this show. This show kicks ass. There's nothing missing. So rather than go down to a trio, I didn't have that much confidence in my skills. I thought I would go down to a 4-piece. And then by doing that, I didn't want people to feel like I was just downsizing. I really wanted a different sound. I wanted a sound that was leaning more on the guitar, and I wanted to push myself to be a better guitar player. And when you have a big band with horns like that, you don't have to do anything. You can throw your hands up and it sounds great, you know. and and so it was making me a little lazy, and I thought I'm gonna strip it down to 4 pieces, and I want it to make sure that everybody understands that this is a different thing that I'm doing, not just a smaller thing. And so we named the band, and I thought, what are we going to call the band? We kicked around a lot of ideas, you know. And we were looking at some of my album titles. Like one of the ideas that came up was the Soul Shakers. You know, the Soul Shakers is the name of an album. You know, and the Hard Believers. You know, could have been, and then the Painkillers came up, and we thought, well,
That's
that
it.
rocks.
That's it.
That rocks. And the idea is that the music is a painkiller. It's not about drugs, obviously.
Right.
It's about
It kills your pain. It kills your pain.
Yeah.
So I read a little bit that the album The Devil You Know was influenced by you listening to your kids' music. Was that, am I right or wrong?
Yeah, there's some truth to that. I mean, you know, my 2 youngest kids had become teenagers. And I was driving to school like I always did. And now instead of me, you know, programming the music, they were programming the music, as teenagers will do, you know. So on that 20-minute drive to school in the morning, I'd be listening to what they're listening to. And they were listening to the Black Keys and Jack White and stuff like that, which I'm very proud of them for having such good taste. And I'm listening to this stuff going, wow, this music
Has blues in it.
This is blues.
Yeah.
You know, this is kind of heavier blues. Like I grew up with Zeppelin and stuff like that, you know. And I thought it was the creativity was a fantastic, you know. So it did have an influence on me. And the other band that they were listening to a lot at the time was Green Day. So I was getting a good dose of that. And, you know, and they were also listening to bands like Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin, and they liked, you know, blues rock stuff like that. So it was an interesting time. And I just thought, this reminds me of what it was like when I was young, listening to rock and roll that was blues influenced. And I think I'm going to take my band in that direction now. I want to see what I can do without the sound of horns, you know, just a little, you know, and just rock out on the guitar a little bit. And I think I might have gone a little too far on that record for some of my fans. A lot of people really liked it, and
I
a lot
did.
of people didn't like it as much. But I had some cool guests on there like Tab Benoit and Samantha Fish and Magic Dick and the Holmes brothers, and I think that's it. But it was, you know, it was a really interesting bunch of songs. Marsha Ball guested on that record, and I really thought it was my most visionary accomplishment in a long time.
Well,
And I was
you
really
were
excited
pushing the
about it.
envelope, which was good. You always have been like that. That's one of the things that I like about you is you continue to push the envelope, trying new things, as many new things as you can for each record. And let's fast forward to Stomping Ground,
Right.
which is, I'm going to say this, I don't know if I'm correct, your first concept album about you. Correct? Am I right
Yeah.
or wrong?
Yeah. There was a concept there, and there was a theme to it. It was about, you know, what it was like for me growing up in my hometown of San Jose, California. And I was exposed to an interesting, you know, swath of music because of the, you know, growing up in sort of a, you know, Mexican American neighborhood. It wasn't your, you know, middle class, you know, white neighborhood in San Jose where I grew up. I was exposed to, um, you know, there was this thing where lowriders would be driving around through town, and every time they drove by, there would be music blasting out of the car, right? The windows down and music blasting out of the windows, and they would play The Midnight Hour by Wilson Pickett, or Angel Baby was a big one. And I remember listening to after a while, it's kind of changed, and it was war and slipping into darkness and Santana, you know. And so I'm hanging out with my hippie friends. And we're listening to Michael Bloomfield and Electric Flag, and we're listening to, you know, Eric Clapton, let's say, and Cream and all of that. And then I'm getting this other soul music and Latin rock, and all of that stuff was all around me, you know. So I wanted to put out a record that showed the influence that I had in me and where, you know, some of it comes from. And so I did some original songs along those lines, and I also did a handful of covers.
And then you released a live album right after that.
Live album, I felt was time for everybody to hear the Painkillers live, because I have a live at the Fillmore with the original Tommy Castro band, with a few extra, a couple other guys were added to that show. It was live at the Fillmore, and that was a big deal for us. We sold out the Fillmore that night. It was a big deal for us. But I hadn't done a live album with this new lineup, and so we were really sounding good. I felt the band was just kicking ass everywhere we went, and it was time to record it live. And yeah, I love that record.
So do I. And then the second concept record, which is the new one, which is you did one about yourself, and now you're actually doing an actual, the new album is an actual concept album that you actually thought about writing about a story, basically.
Yeah, I wanted to do like the equivalent of a rock opera in our genre. And the blues nowadays, there's a huge umbrella for us to be under, you know. And that's a happy place for me to be, because I like greasy old soul music a lot. I like rock and roll a lot, and I like traditional blues a lot. All types of traditional blues, whether it's from Texas or Chicago or New Orleans, Louisiana, some of the West Coast, you know, jump and swing bands, and you know, artists like, you know, Lowell Fulsom and Jimmy McCracklin, you know, from the West Coast. People don't think about the blues coming from the West Coast so much, but you know, I have all of that in me, and so I wanted to make a blues opera, but for me, that would have to have all of the usual ingredients, you know, all of those sounds that you're usually in my albums. It wasn't going to be just a traditional blues record. I just didn't think that would be the right way to approach it, an album coming from me. So yeah, and you know, the idea was I was a little nervous about it, and I run it by Bruce at Alligator, and he didn't, you know, he didn't necessarily like it a lot, but he didn't dislike the idea. He said, well, he goes, that could work. It depends on the songs. And he said the songs would all have to stand on their own, because in the way people buy music these days and listen to music these days, not like they don't sit down and listen to a whole album. So each song better be, you know, make sense on its own. And I said, agreed. I would want that too. So anyway, we moved forward. I had been talking to Tom Hambridge about producing, and I run it by him, and he loved the idea. And we started moving forward with the project. And I went to Nashville and wrote some songs with him before COVID. We started on songs, and then we continued to work on them and tweak them and rewrite them and finish them as time went on. And we're supposed to go in the studio in May of 2020, but that got postponed because of the pandemic. And we went in October and cut. And then I went back home and did some work on it in the Bay Area. And I was really nervous until we put it all together and then sequenced them, you know, what song comes first on the album, second and third, because it couldn't just, like you usually do, you have a batch of songs. You say, what is the strongest song? And you lead with that. And then you think, well, what are the next two strongest songs? What are the best? You know, we put them right up front. You load those up in the front. And that's how you typically sequence an album. And then you mix up the grooves and tempos and stuff. You got to consider all that. But now we had to consider the story. And lucky for us, it flows just fine, with the story and the sequence. And until I heard it in order, mixed and mastered, and I wasn't really sure until that happened. And then I went, we have a good album. We have a great record on our hands here. I really like this.
You do.
Yeah, and I'm really picky about my own stuff. I'm very critical, and I'm still critical, but I assessed that it was good. That was as far as I went.
So
this is good.
So growing up, what concept albums did you listen to that made you decide that's what I wanted to do? Based on what?
Oh, well, Tommy by The Who.
There you go.
I mean, how could I not listen to that? It was a fantastic piece of work. I mean, I was amazed. Even at that age, I realized just how incredible that album was. And then I remember listening to records like Pink Floyd, The Wall, and things like that, where there was a story, a theme that runs through the whole album. And then again, I got schooling from my young kids when Green Day put out American Idiot, which I thought was also a fantastic record. But I'm like, this isn't my music. I would love to do something like that with my music. And I looked around to see if anybody had done one.
Nobody.
Nobody'd ever done it before. And
nope.
So far, as you get to the point where you have 20 albums under your belt, and you're trying to think of what am I going to do next, a good idea like that is very important. I was like, what am I going to do now? And that idea came up, and we went with it, and I'm just really happy about it, the way it turned out. Now, I should point out that I really got the idea from a close personal friend of mine I was just having a conversation with, and the idea came up, and I went, ding, this is a good idea.
I got a hard question for you. What are you gonna do next after that?
Yeah. I have no idea. This came out last month, and so I'm good for a while,
That's a hard question. Now that you put all your energy and effort into putting in a record like this, it's hard to think about what you're going to do next after that.
I really have no idea. I absolutely have no idea what I'm going to do next. I might, I'll think of something.
So you mentioned Bay Area people like Santana and Green Day. Have you ever run into those guys?
Oh yeah. We had an awards show here called the Bay Area Music Awards, otherwise known as the BAMMys. So, but when everybody, a lot of towns or regions will have local award shows, but in the Bay Area, the people that were included were Sammy Hagar and Santana and Grateful Dead, and members of the Grateful Dead, I should say, or bands like Green Day and all the Bonnie Raitt, Clarence Clemens, people that are based here, Journey, members of Journey. They were always included in the award shows, and we were able to get won a couple awards on those in those days in the blues category. So I got to meet those guys and hang out with them and stuff like that. And
ever get to play with any of them?
Well, Carlos came in to see us one night, and he got on stage and played with us. And no, actually that night he came in to see us, and he didn't play. He got up and he said a few words about me on the microphone. And he said something like, the blues is in good hands with this guy. And he said a few nice things. And then the Blind Pig guys, latched onto that quote, and they used it for the next 20 years, I guess. But I also had a chance to, I would go over to Carlos' house from time to time, and he was like a mentor to me in a way. He would, I'd take in my latest recording, and he would chime in, tell me what he thinks of it, or what I could do, or what it could, give me some ideas.
Wow.
And just be like a big brother type figure, and that was real cool. Guys like, of course, Elvin Bishop was probably my biggest influence of all. When I was young, I wanted to be just like Elvin, man. In fact, I used to wear overalls to school. I did. I had, I let my hair grow out and I wear overalls to school. I bought a cheap a red guitar that was like a Japanese copy of his 335, and so now, over the years I've had a chance to play alongside of him. A lot of my opportunities, we went on that tour with BB King, Buddy Guy. We did a couple tours with them back in like 2000, 2001. So I got to sit in with BB King on a few occasions.
Yeah.
John Lee Hooker was a friend. He lived in the Bay Area, and we had the same booking agent. We'd run into each other a lot. So I had a chance to hang out and meet and play alongside of some of my heroes like that. And now on the Blues Cruise, there's been so many. I can't even, Taj Mahal is one of my biggest influences. And, and he's a friend now, he wants me to learn how to speak Portuguese because I'm Portuguese, and he thinks it's terrible that I don't speak any. So things like that.
Think about when you first started out, and today, after all those years, all the great memories you have of some of your heroes, and actually getting to spend time with them. They're friends with you. How's that feel today versus when you first started?
It's worth more to me than money. It really is. And I mean, I never dreamed that I'd have those opportunity to have conversations with those guys about music and about life. And talking to Elvin or Taj, I mean, these are really smart guys. They're not just talented guys. They're really smart, and they're they've been kind to me and helpful to me, and they've been share their wisdom and stuff like that. And you just,
yeah, you can't beat that. That's priceless.
yeah.
So you have a local date coming here in Massachusetts. You're going to be playing the Bull Run on the 18th after you get off your cruise.
Yes, we are, man. I can't wait. We're doing a whole. We just finished a run of dates. We had Marcia Ball, Co-Bill on about a dozen shows, all through the Midwest, and then we're going. We finished up some dates on our own, Southeast, and then we left our bus in Florida, and we flew home for 10 days, and then we're going back, and Deanna and I will be flying to the Blues Cruise, meeting up with my band, and having a great time on the Blues Cruise as usual.
Who else is going to be with you on the cruise? Do you know?
Well, I know Taj and Kebmo are on. I think Danielle Nicole is on. I think Victor Wainwright is on. Ronnie Baker Brooks. Just go on bluescruise.com and look at the lineup. But what people don't know is because of all the rescheduling and everything, there's still cabins available on this Blues Cruise in November. So if anybody had a wild hair and decided to,
they wanted to go.
I mean, life's too short. That money's it's nice to have it in the bank, and you probably should, do. But I say, book yourself a cabin on the Blues Cruise. You'll never
regret
the same
it
again.
Yep.
You'll never regret it. You'll never be the same. The only problem with that is you want to go every year. That's kind of, a lot of people do that.
Well, Tommy, how do people find out? You have a website, TommyCastro.com, right?
Yeah, and we just had it all revamped. It looks nice and clean and fresh, and has it's a state of the art. And we're on all the social media platforms, and the way things are right now, how well you feel like you're doing um, as an artist and connecting with your audience. It's all basically done, except for a live show. Everything else is done on social media. All the usual ways are still there, but it really helps us if people like our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram, and post a picture of the show if you come, or just respond to something that you see on our social media. That really means a lot to us, and so please check those out. And yeah, the website, and you can write to us. There's still the old-fashioned way of emailing our website. Those emails will get to me, or you can message me if you want. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we didn't used to have available.
That's good. So Bluesman Came to Town. I am going to be playing that in its entirety right after this interview. How do you like that?
Wow. Well, I like that because the album really makes sense if you listen to the whole thing. So
Yep.
I like to invite your listeners to put some, put a little time aside, get some headphones, or put it on your stereo with your good speakers, and just relax and listen to the whole story. It's a pretty good little journey, and I really like the way it came out, and I think you will too.
You think maybe you'll do another one down the road?
No. I'll
No?
do something else. I'll do something else.
No
The big
follow-up.
question is if it's going to make it to Broadway.
Yeah, there you go. I never thought of that. It might.
You never know.
I never
At
know.
the moment,
Well,
if somebody's out there and they listen to it and think to themselves, this would make a great play. I think we should do it. And there's a lot of people out there these days that have money to burn and are interested in art. And I would be okay with that if somebody wanted to put this on stage. It would be really cool, I think. But no plans at the moment.
all right. Well, I want to say thank you very much. I've taken a lot of your time up, but it's been fun.
All right, John. Appreciate you, and congratulations
Thank
on
you.
40 years and then some.
And then some. I'm continuing. I love it. Guys like you make it worthwhile to do this.
Blues Deluxe.
You
It's a
got
good
it.
name for your show.
Thank
All
you.
right, man.
Have a good one. Nice
Take care, man.
talking to you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You too, man. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. All right, you're listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell. That was Tommy Castro right there.